to another episode of the Hot Girls Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Selena, and I am joined today with the amazing Kayla.
Hello.
Kayla is actually someone that I've known through community for some years now, back to my nonprofit days. Kayla is one of the reasons why this podcast exists. So, shout out to you. When I was first starting this podcast, y'all, I heard the same things about podcasts that we all do. And I was not really trying to put my voice out here this way. I was still operating on a lot of fear. And Kayla encouraged me and held space for like my fear and was like, nah, like you good, like do this. This is something that you should put your time and energy towards. And that encouragement is a part of why the Hot Girls Healing Podcast exists today. So thank you so much, Kayla.
Yes.
You are so like one of those needed people. Like we all need somebody sometime to encourage us to keep going on our path. And so being one of those people is so important. I try to be one of those people always to encourage people to keep fighting for yourself. And so even I needed to hear that sometimes because I get scared and I was definitely operating on fear at that time. I've done a lot of work since then to actively lean into people who are encouraging me instead of people who are tearing me down, and that has helped a lot, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Kayla. Part of why we're here today, season 2 going strong. So today we're going to be actually talking about returning home. Hard eyes, y'all. Like this is such a gooey, warm, just rich, brown feeling. When I think about returning home, I think about, soil for some reason. The earth comes to mind. So this is about to be a real, just beautiful, deep conversation. Gather around, y'all. Come on in. Settle.
Take a seat with us.
Yes, exactly. Kayla, can you please tell the beautiful people more about yourself before we start this conversation?
Yeah, no. First of all, you set the bar so high for me. It was a pleasure meeting this beautiful soul. And I just want to start there because I feel like meeting you honestly started a trajectory for me, like that steamrolled into this healing journey that I feel like has blossomed into some beautiful opportunities in my life now. So it's crazy how little moments and little encounters can truly pivot our lives. And also just like meeting you, I don't know if you realize that. I just recognize like you have something very valuable to say. And I think sometimes we just need to hear that. Like it's not, I don't know. I just have to start there. Like that's our encounter and how we met was just so organic and so timely, I think, for the both of us. So in the same way, like you shared that was impactful for you, it was also really impactful for me. And so where am I at now? I'm in North Carolina. I have been here for about 3 years now. And that's a lot for me, y'all. Because as I'll probably share, I've been kind of this like serial transplant. I've moved a total of about 11 times in my life. So, just a lot of movement, a lot of transition seasons, a lot of trying to rebuild a sense of community and foundation from the ground up over and over again. So that's why I wanted to talk about this whole idea of coming back home because moving to North Carolina was the first time I came back to live near my mom and my sisters for a very long time. I was gone for probably about 7 years for a period where I didn't live near my family. So homecoming means a lot of different things in my life, but I don't know if that over answers the initial topic.
No.
But yeah, that's where I'm pursuing my PhD right now. And I am just trying to stay alive and keep doing good things with my community.
I'm just so here feeling so proud of you. I can't even. Like y'all, this person I'm coming to North Carolina to visit you, period.
Please,
Anyway,
soon. We can book that now.
Girl, the way these flight prices is looking.
Oh yeah.
But it's still happening. Okay. No, you actually led us right into the discussion with your beautiful introduction. I'm telling you, just there's so much value in pouring into someone else. Like, and I think that when we think about returning home, like sometimes that can be scary. Like, home wasn't
Mm-mm.
always this place of safety for everyone.
Mm-mm.
Um, when you're talking about these periods of transition and how while you're in these periods of transition, you really start to like crave home almost. Um, and so that leads us to like, where is home? For you, that was where your family is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And for people who have moved a lot, I've definitely moved a lot. I didn't move always from city to city,
Mm-hmm.
but I grew up with, you know, a period of time in my life with a lot of housing insecurity. And so just moving from place to place, even within a couple of cities,
Mm-hmm.
um, I didn't even count anymore. um, I don't know how many times I moved or how many times I lost everything during those periods of time, but
Mm.
definitely got me thinking about where is home.
Yeah.
And a
Would
lot
you
of times, no, go ahead.
Well, so like for you, I'm curious, would you say like in those times that you kind of went back home, would you consider those like a season of almost like you it was time and you knew it was time to go back home, or you just needed kind of this step back to kind of rebuild? Like
Mm,
how did that like coming back home like kind of resonate for you?
I think like it wasn't the coming back home part that resonated. It was the figuring out where is home part that resonated.
Mm,
Because when home is always changing, you're like, okay, so is home just these little shelters or corners that are for us that have our things in them? Is
mm,
home these people that I'm in this struggle with, you know, who are doing this transitioning with me? Like, that notion of where is home was what I was constantly trying to figure out in these moments of transition, because it seemed like we were always transitioning. So if you're always moving, then home can't be the place, right? Home has to be
mm,
something else. It's taken me up into my probably 20s to start my affirmations of home being my body
mm,
and me being safe in this home was like something I had to figure out, because the buildings kept on changing and it took me a while to get comfortable in each of them. So how could home be the building if I'm not even feeling comfortable here for a while?
mm-hmm.
How did you figure out where home was for you?
Mm. Um, that's a really good question. I think for me, home was never, like you said, a physical place or a building that I could go back to. And I think I always used to almost envy that about people, that they had a place that they can go and put their bags down and let their walls down and be embraced. And those components of like going back to a place, I think is what I used to seek so much. And so for me, um, going back home became this definition of where can I feel most like embraced and safe, to kind of let my walls down and to um, not feel like I have to have my guard up. And that's in so many different areas of my life that like I had to figure out what is going back home. Is home leaving the office and going back to the building where I can stop thinking about work? Is home going back to a place where my sisters and my mom are, and we pour a cup of tea on the porch, and I'm finally talking to people who see me fully, and I don't have to put a face on, I don't have to mask, I don't have to code switch. Like, is it that place where I'm just truly myself? And I love that whole thing you just said about being in your body, because I think for me, especially lately, in dealing with life, situations as they come, and breakups and all those things, like I have to find that centering for myself within here. And so I carry myself everywhere I go. So for me, I just have to find a sense of home and belonging and safety that resonates where I'm at in this body, because I carry this body everywhere I go.
Mm,
And so because it was never like a physical place I can like physically drive to, I had to reframe how I was thinking about what home even meant. So for me, it started with my family, that was home. But sometimes, you know, when your family it doesn't function in all the functional ways, like that doesn't feel super safe all the time. So you still have to find home even within that chaos.
Mm.
So for me, that I found my safe place, and for like some of that has turned into like rekindling my relationship with my spirituality and God, and so that resonates in a place that comes from within. Yeah, so that's what home is looking
Ooh,
like right now.
yes. Oh, I was just thinking about how much peace you get when you add in that body as home part. It was so anxiety inducing, always being in a like position of transition. Like even
Mm-hmm.
now, while my life is so much more stable, like if I'm in a transitionary period, I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Selena, you know how this gonna make you feel. So
Right.
you're
It's
okay.
anxious inducing, like when you know a change is about to happen.
Literally just because of, you know, the schemas that I have built up around transition or change, like always being so abrupt, always being so traumatic.
Mm,
You really have to like almost reparent yourself to expect something different, to navigate that differently,
mm-hmm.
um, and to then claim this ownership of yourself. Because then once you know that you're your home, like I feel a different sense of ownership of myself and what that
Mm-hmm.
meant in my life. And so I think when I think about returning home, it's definitely so much more situational than it is like physical now.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely something about like, where do I feel safe? Where can I be my most genuine self and be accepted? You
Mm-hmm.
know, is it spaces with my blood family? Is it spaces with chosen family? Are there
Mm-hmm.
spaces where both like are coming together and providing a safe space for me? It,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it comes more about this like value system rather than place and location.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really cool because I feel like there's almost levels to it too. You know, like once
Mm,
you find that sense of home within yourself, it's almost like, at least for me, it's like now I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper to those ties of home that go beyond me and my
mm,
ancestral knowings and my, you know,
yeah,
my lineage, and I want to find home that resonates beyond just like the body of this present time that we're living in.
yes, for sure.
Yeah, so like some of that has been just like this rediscovering a sense of home with like being in the outdoors and being in the soil, kind of like what you were saying earlier. Like it's this regrounding and reconstituting like a sense of self
Mm.
in the natural world. So I know that sounds really like I've been living in North Carolina too long, but
No, it doesn't. It sounds beautiful. It sounds indigenous, you know? It
yeah.
sounds like returning home. And like it's wild to think about it because you know, people have moved so much like you know, black people, we love to claim a city. We love to claim our,
We sure
you
do.
know? And I'm like, I grew up predominantly in two different cities and two
Mhm.
different states. And so when
Remind
people
me, where did you grow up again?
see, like I grew up in I kind of like came of age in Vancouver, which is also Washington, which is also where I was born.
Okay.
But I grew up in Portland. Like
Oh.
it's where all my first memories are. It's where I first like realized like where I stood in my family. It's where, you know, like I figured
Mm.
out so many things there. I have so many like memories there.
Mm.
Um, but
So
I realized they're all like of a certain age.
yeah. Okay, I do have a question for you now because that made me think. Like, because I have so many different like almost childhood homes growing up, like what is that feeling you get when you revisit like these places that used to be home, but they're no longer what they were to you? Like what does it feel like going back to like your childhood homes that you no longer live in? Have you gone back?
I've only gone back to two childhood homes because I'm not going back to the other.
That's that's fair.
But that being said, like I actually like have a strong feeling for a house that I actually experienced a lot of trauma in.
Mm-hmm.
But I also grew up in that house and I have a lot of happy memories there too. Um,
Mm.
of like being able to play, run in the yard. My favorite tree in the entire world is in the backyard of that house. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And
yeah.
so like I even, I'm always like one day I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna buy that house that I grew up in that used to look
Mm,
so big, and then when I went back to visit it, I was like, wow, it's actually a really small house for the amount of people who live there.
yeah. Oh, that perspective shifting.
Yeah, yeah. And then I also was born in a house, and so I've been back to the house that I was born in. And it was purple, which is my favorite color. So I always think that that was
Oh,
like,
just for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, I'm always like, never thought of buying that house though, but I was told that it was haunted, so I'm like, nah, those ghosts can rest.
Who brought the ghost? Because you're like,
Apparently it was haunted when we moved in. Like a lot of people had scary paranormal experiences in that house that I was born in.
oh,
Yeah, it was said to
okay.
be hunted by like a child. Like there was a child that like fell out of the second story window and like ended up passing away. So people would hear like weird like child noises.
Hmm.
My older sister was like 2 years old when they lived in that house, and like they would always say she was so terrified in that house. Like she would always cry and point in different directions, and like she didn't like
Interesting.
the lights being off, like all type of weird
Mm.
stuff in that house that I was born in. And I'm like such a spooky lover too. So I was probably just living my best life as a baby.
You said, look, I'm with my people. I'm with my kin out
Yeah.
here.
I'm like, honestly, I was just over there. Like they not even bad.
Oh man. Um no, I asked that because I was thinking about recently, and I don't know how much of this like you're going to share or not, but like I I remember going back to where I used to live where I had experienced a lot of trauma.
Mhm.
And it was like I hadn't been back in years. And so I considered this kind of going back to a place that was home.
Mhm.
But it honestly, it was this really interesting, like almost cathartic feeling of like reconnecting with a past wounded version of myself, that I
Mhm.
feel like I kind of needed to reconcile with. And so it was like a version of like going back home that I didn't want to do, but I still felt pulled and called to go back and kind of face that myself, you know? Um, so this was kind of a weird version of going back home. But it was, yeah, I just remember going back and I drove by this house and I sat in front of the house and I just sat there and I could feel like all of these feelings kind of returning to myself. And that goes back to like how we're connected in some ways to places, this place attachment, and how like, a sense of place can truly be attached to a location or specific like body of water, something like that. I
Mhm.
truly felt like that presence come back into me. And it was really hard to sit with, but I felt like it was something I needed to do because I released all these tears I didn't even know I had.
Mhm.
Um, and then I could move on, and I haven't been back to that house since. But I just remember I felt pulled, and I hadn't planned it out. I just felt pulled to go
Mhm.
back, Kayla, go back home, go back to this place that was home. You left a version of yourself there that was very wounded, and I went back to her, and I allowed myself to reconcile with her in that moment. And it was just really cathartic. So yeah.
Yeah, not you making me feel emotional. I did not come here for this.
I'm sorry. We're supposed to be hot girl healing though, right?
No, that's so deep though. I'm like, oh my God. The way that I'm like avoiding those places still, I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah.
No, that's wild though. I could think of a couple of places
Mm,
that I would return to during that time, but when it comes to like inner child healing and you learn that like
mm,
there's different stages of your inner child that needs to be healed.
hmm.
Like I already know that when I heal my inner teenager, it's going to be my revenge era, and I'm just not ready for
Mm.
that yet. Like I just,
Still, listen, that will emerge when it's ready to emerge.
yeah, I need to do. We still with the adolescence right now.
That's
And it's a
fair.
soft place. It's a place where I get to like be really gentle with myself and other
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
I'm still like establishing my boundaries and like holding them firmly and seeing my life change because of it.
Yeah.
I feel that coming.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be my next chapter, but with it comes this like ache in my throat chakra. And I'm like, please don't make me say things about my teenage years. Please don't make
Hmm.
me do that.
Yeah.
But I know I'm gonna have to
When you're ready,
when I'm
not on
ready.
anybody else's clock.
Ooh, and when I'm ready, don't seem to be when other people are ready anyway, because I can hold on to things for years and years and years and years and years and
Hmm.
years and years and years, and then say them when I'm ready, and it's still not the right time. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing that I'm coming to realize, that like honoring my truth and being real and saying the things that I've always needed to say will come at a cost.
Hmm.
And it'll be a cost that I'm ready for. And
Hmm.
I've been ready for with everything that I've ever said. So, it's coming and it's gonna be a ride. Like, whew,
Hmm.
that teenage angst is something else. And like even confronting it as an adult, I'm like, I get why people are nervous around teenagers.
Yeah.
No, like I've never been, because genuinely all they fucking want is respect, which we never
Hmm.
got as teenagers. So that's where all the rage and the angst comes from, because you
Mm.
actually do know things when you're a teenager. You actually do have a perspective. You have noticed some shit, but no one
Yes.
wants to listen to you.
Yeah,
So
because you're still, especially in a lot of, well, I won't speak for all Black households, but like I feel like we were almost kept in this child like category for so long, and it's like, well, once you hit 18, then officially like something flips. So it's like, no, all throughout that time, like we have very mature minds developing, and so to be kept in this box of being a child is like diminishing our full selves in a lot of ways. But
yeah.
that's probably another podcast.
No, girl, look, we dip into a lot of things here. If
Mm.
it's relevant, it's gonna get spoken on. But yeah, like,
Yeah.
seriously. So yeah, returning to those homes that I lived in as a teenager, or places that I stayed at a lot. Because when I'm thinking back to teenage years, I like wasn't at home a lot
Yeah.
too. So when I was staying with my sisters, or you know, yeah, just the dynamics that change when you become a Black teenage girl.
Yeah.
Um, and I put girl scare quotes around myself, because I'm non-binary, likely was then, just didn't have the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
But just be the policing, the
Mm-hmm.
going from being a sweet little cute child to this threat all of a sudden, which we never
Yeah.
talk about, like, or I guess it probably is spoken about somewhere, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like it's spoken about enough, how Black girls are also seen as threats. Like there's this switch where we aren't a cute little person anymore either. Now we're a
Yep.
threat, but in a different way than the boys are seen as. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you're dark skinned, sometimes in the same way that the boys are seen as. So
Mm-hmm.
it was such a weird time becoming a teenager, that I think I'm still working myself up to that largely.
Yeah.
Those homes and spaces, the traumas were different. Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
whole different level.
I hear you. I hear you. This is just making me think too, like, I'm thinking about my sister's situation now. She has moved back in with our mom for a
Mhm.
temporary time. And I know a lot of people are kind of dealing with this of instability of y'all. Listen, economy is economying. It is crazy. So I get it. Do not be hard on yourself.
Mhm.
But I was just thinking about like when I had left home to go off to college and I was gone for like 7 years and living and doing my little independent life, I became I became myself in a totally different way than when I was raised in a household, right? Like I
Mhm.
explored my queerness for the first time. I explored who the things I actually liked and wanted to pursue. I was doing a lot of unlearning in that time. So when I had to actually come back to like home, like where my family was, to where I was seen in this light of being this teenager, like the version of myself I had left in that household, that's somewhat like when you come back to a place, like they kind of still receive you as if you were the same person when you left, right?
Yeah.
Especially like when you're thinking about like parents maybe or like family, like even my sisters, we had to relearn
Oh
our
yeah.
relationship when I came back home because the dynamic we knew with each other was a version of myself before I had done all of that learning and exploration of
Mhm.
myself. So it was so hard coming back under a roof or coming back home with amongst family when I was a different person and almost entirely, you know? That I don't know how, like, if that's something that you had to deal with, but it was
Yeah.
hard.
It's something I'm still dealing with because as
Mm,
you evolve and grow and know yourself more, there's like this constant returning home because you always have to
mm,
like return home to update. Like, hey y'all, this is the new update on me, which is
mm-hmm,
natural and should be happening. But I've found spaces where I returned home with my updated version of myself and was not met with welcoming open arms.
mm,
And I think that's something to speak about too. Like, what do you do when you return to what you consider to be home and it's not accepting? It doesn't get the
mm,
or the you that's always been there but was just a little quieter about who you were. Um, how do you navigate that? You know, I'm finding that it's that perspective shift of where home is, right? Because
mm,
then when you're home, you can try to share that home with other people.
mm,
If other people don't identify with that space, that's okay.
mm,
And that's what I found. That's why I brought up chosen family and blood family because
mm,
they're all family.
right.
Some of them, the dynamics are just very different. Like
Yeah.
there's this almost level of like entitlement that can be around blood family where it's like we don't have to
Ooh.
really accept you, we don't really have to respect you, but you gonna
Mm-hmm.
be. And when boundaries come into the picture and they find that you will in fact not be there,
Mm-hmm.
it causes like excuse me, sometimes attention and confusion, and
Mm-hmm.
then you think you're better than people and you're the problem. And
It, and you know, it's interesting because I read somewhere the other day how people, and I don't know how much merit this has, but they were talking about how, like, if you're the one in the family who seems to be causing a lot of friction, a lot of times it's because you have become a more healed, evolved version of yourself. And when that's met with dysfunction, and dysfunction doesn't know how to deal with, you know, like the evolved, more healed version, that's met with a lot of friction.
mhm.
And I thought, I mean, they framed it a lot better than I just did, but I'm like, that just makes so much sense. But I, like, for me, like, thinking about that situation of coming back and like having the, you know, especially coming back to a more traditional household with like my queerness and that truth. I feel like coming back to this space, to some of these spaces, and it's not all just physical spaces, it could be old friend spaces and or whatever it might be. I think it's almost like I come back as like this rock, like once you, like, I found that home in myself, like I feel like the chaos didn't really get to me in the same way that it used to. And it's almost like looking at something from like a bird's eye view. Like I feel like I'm witnessing it, and the things that used to provoke me or used to hurt me, words that used to like keep me trapped in like a cage, like I just, they couldn't touch me. Like it was just like, it was kind of like, I mean, I hear you. um and I don't have to deal with this and I don't have to receive this. So I have the sense now to be able to remove myself from this situation. And I can try to explain because I love you, or I love, you know, some of these people in this space, and I want you to come on this new journey with me where I'm moving to. But like, I also know that like the more healed version of myself, like I don't have to stay here, you know, like this was
Yeah,
home, but like my home is where I carry me to, right?
yeah.
Um,
Woo.
so
To be
yeah.
black and queer and understand that you are your home is a particular power.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not like you have to stay in isolation. Like cuz I understand it's a privilege to, you know, have a relationship with your family. I
Mhm.
think even when that's estranged, like there's something beautiful about being able to find home in yourself. And I think when I found that home, it's like naturally I was able to have people gravitate into my life when I didn't feel like I was
Mhm.
desperately like looking for home in other people or other places to feel a sense of okayness and validation. Like once I felt like I found that within myself, like it just felt more organic to have other relationships and meaningful connections come into my life because I was
Yeah,
no longer chasing it, you know, to get something like desperately, you know. Does
yeah,
that kind of make
absolutely.
sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And the thing about it is, like, when you do that, you just get to continue living your beautiful life, evolving and
Hmm.
growing. And then next thing you know, that family member pop back up with a deeper level of understanding and
Yeah,
tolerance.
but
And whole
that's
time
their
you just held
timeline.
your
That's
boundary,
yeah.
you know? And that's honestly kind of what I found because, again, moving away from operating on fear and fear of loss. I'm not going to fear the loss of a relationship with someone who is unwilling or unable to hold space for all of who I truly am, which is an
Mhm.
amazing person, you know? And so you can move on with your life. You can hold that boundary. You can relish in the space of people who value and see who you are. And then when people can or are willing to, in your blood family, see that and receive who you are and just be open to it, because that's the other thing. Like, sometimes when people have known you for a long time, they're like, nah, that's not who you are, this is who you are. But you have to be willing to trust and respect people to know more so than you who they truly are, and let them tell you. And there's that works on both sides,
Yeah.
not only just for you, but see people for who they truly are. Don't try to paint them with the picture of the loving, family member that you always have, who you just know will accept you no matter what. And
Yeah.
then whole time you just want to be your whole self, and they just can't accept it. They can't
Mhm.
accept. And the thing about being Black and queer is, like, I've seen people put more effort into not understanding a Black queer person than
Mhm.
the effort they're willing to put into understanding them, listening to them, holding
Right.
space for their truth.
Right. Because I
You
mean,
don't tolerate that.
it and it's hard, right? Like it's because I feel like they take this identity and they affiliate it with something that's an attack on their inherent belief structures.
Hmm.
And so I think it's challenging to like for me, like it's like humanize this experience, humanize the person in their
Hmm.
existence. Don't take the identity or the like any constructs around that you've affiliated with that to intercede the humanity of the person that's in front of you, and I think that's really hard for some people. So but like we
No,
can't be
it,
the
it
ones to force
is.
them to reconcile that for themselves.
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk, about that as an inherent risk with returning home, because
Mm,
there are, risks associated with this. Vulnerability does open you up to get your feelings hurt.
yeah.
But, we to live thriving, beautiful, boundary, boundless lives, like, we have to be willing to be vulnerable with each other and to give somebody the chance to accept us.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that takes leading from a place of love, honestly. Like,
Mhm.
I will quote bell hooks all day if y'all haven't read
Yeah.
it. Read all about love. But I think like true love exists in that vulnerability, and it doesn't mean that there's not the risk of feeling pain. But I think if you trust yourself enough to know yourself enough in a space, then that vulnerability can lead to opportunities of more love. Um, and it's also protect yourself in the way of if you're putting yourself at risk in certain places of going back home. um give yourself the grace and the space to have a place where you can go be well received and have your cup poured back into. You don't have to do it in isolation. Never feel like you have to do anything in isolation. And that also takes I think it takes courage in a place of love to be able to ask for and tell somebody you need them in that way and you need that support. Because I feel like we live in this age of like we feel like we're burdening by telling somebody I might need the extra support here, or I might need your help here. And I get it. Everybody's like, I don't need nobody. Like I
You do,
understand that
though.
sentiment, but we also do need people. you
Yeah.
know
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Community is what will save us. Love is what will save us. And that those are, yeah, definitely umbrellas. There's some more specifics that we could list within
yeah.
those. But yeah, get into
Yeah.
community, get into love, all of that. When we're talking about returning home in this larger narrative, and how when you're anchored and you're grounded, it like fosters this want to explore and to find that
Mm,
deeper connection beyond boundaries or borders. And that actually kind of reminded me of this exploration that I'm getting into more with my own ancestors and
mm,
returning to their homes, like
mm,
returning to the South where my people are from, and, you know, returning to the continent eventually when I'm able to. Like these
mm,
deeper explorations of returning home can connect us to so much richness, like
mm.
so much like inherent connection to the earth, to our
Right,
people,
right.
to the people who came before us, like just
Mhm,
getting to know more deeply what home really means. Like, what does it mean for us to be at home on this planet? You know, what does
mm.
that look like? And how is it attached to sustainability and such? Like, it's just such, you can go, the paths are endless with
Yeah.
returning home and the richness and the depth that it can provide for your life. I
Yeah.
want to talk about this rural space that you've returned to and how
Mm.
that has like informed your thoughts around returning home.
Um, yeah, I think it's really interesting because you gave my brain like 20 million different ways it could go.
Yeah, the
Well,
ins
I'll
and
just
outs.
I'll start with I moved from Chicago to straight from Chicago, city life in my little apartment to a small town in the mountains, Appalachia of North Carolina, so western part of the state. And I had never really experienced life to this degree in a sense of like rural living. Um, and my time there honestly was one of the most transformational experiences I've ever had. And it gave me an opportunity to like experience what it meant to truly have people like be slow down and be present and to show up for people like with true ethics of like care, not care because it gets them something or care because I have some other agenda. I mean like slow down, sit down honey, let me pour you some tea and like let's talk about this and like let me see if I can show up with my bags to help you carry this thing over here. Like it was so genuine. And I like something about that like ethic of care and true like slowing down allowed me to slow down myself because I had been going so quickly. I had been so worried about what comes next, career pursuits, keeping up with staying and with trends, and like just all these things had clouded my mind, and to the point that like I had not sat down in just silence. I had not sat down in just boredom. I was always scrolling my phone. I was trying to figure out the next thing to post. Like I'm sure many people experience this. That it just felt like there was so much clutter in my world. And so coming back to this rural space gave me the pause and the slow down to truly just sit with myself, to sit with myself and to sit amongst nature, look out at those pretty those pretty mountains, and to really ask myself questions and to realign with who I truly was, and that voice that was deep down there was getting muffled by all the incessant noise on what I should be doing, who I should be doing it with, all these different things. And I think living in a rural space taught me um, to care more about my neighbors, to care more about the people next to me, to pause long enough to have a conversation and truly have that conversation and be in that conversation and not be thinking about where I'm going to be after the conversation. And it just gave me permission to be okay with like slowing down. And it also for me it gave me a chance to reconnect with indigeneity a little bit more. Um, and the Eastern Band of Cherokee. I have a few friends out there. And it just was kind of beautiful, like engaging with them because a lot of people think that like for some reason indigenous folks like don't exist or like they're like this historic thing that only exists in books. So it was really cool just connecting with them and kind of laughing a little bit about the solidarity of some of the different oppressions that our groups face. And we're like, you are my brother, like you're my kin, like why are we over here pointing out who has the worst depression? Like um but yeah, it was a honestly, it's hard to summarize the experience all into one, but I will just say like it played a huge role in me finding that home within myself, and I think it was because it was really removed from the capitalist machine of being in a city that's always on, and so yeah.
Ooh, I mean, I was just sitting there when you were describing, like sitting on the porch and
Mm,
actually being able to like look at the mountains. I was like, yes, you know where
yeah.
when I get to see the mountains on my way to work on the bus.
Mhm.
Like, yes. Oh my God. I always tell my husband, like, we are moving to some small town somewhere. I'm gonna ride my bike everywhere. I'm gonna wave to people while I'm riding my bike because I do
Yeah.
not want to ride with no hands. Okay. So I'm like, hey, like
Yes.
I want that life. I want real community. I want to know my neighbors. And the thing is, like, I live in an apartment complex, so like we're friendly with our neighbors.
Hmm.
They like grab our packages for us sometimes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I noticed moving because I just moved, and the neighborhood that I lived in before was like super white. And
Mm,
now I live around a lot more black and brown people. And I start to feel that sense of community more.
mm,
Um, and I really want, it's tied to my like want to return home to spaces that are more predominantly black. I've never
mm.
lived anywhere that was predominantly black before, and I want to. I want to live somewhere. I'm like I'd be down to live somewhere where people are predominantly brown. Like I
Yeah.
just live where people are not predominantly white. I want an experience other than the one that I've had for the
Yeah.
last 30 years, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of this returning home for you.
Hmm.
It sounds like I'm saying it, but it's really a question. I'm like, please
Oh
confirm.
no, 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 absolutely. For me it was just kind of like I wanted to explore new things about myself and new experiences. And it really started with like me wanting to I was like, okay, we got all these brown people down south, and I want to see exactly what do we get into in these kind of more country spaces. You know, like
Hmm.
what are we doing? Because I had very city girl,
Yeah.
um, and when I got out there, I just started to find groups and collectives that like farming initiatives and people who were really in to they had like chicken coops, and I'd go and show up and they'd share their like carton of eggs with me, and just because I had a relationship with them I didn't even have to pay, but it was just like we're really out here, y'all, just like weaving baskets and
I want to
getting
weave
chicken
baskets.
eggs and like finding collectives of other like-minded brown folks who are just like, no, we love nature, we love connecting with each other through being outside, and I loved it. And I'm like, this is where I want to be, and seeing us in those spaces and thriving and happy. Like I remember I was at this racial healing retreat in the mountains, and I was with this lady I just met, and she came from New Orleans, and we sat on this dock of like a lake, gorgeous scenery, and we were sitting there and we were just talking about, wouldn't this be a dream? Like if we just all of us, a bunch of black people here, like, and this is what our life looked like. We had the
Mhm.
fruits, and we would go collect the fruits, and we'd bring it back and have dinner all together, and be excited about like the things that we brought to the table,
Mhm.
and just we were sitting there with our feet waiting in the water, and I just remember we looked at each other and we were fully like dressed and stuff, and you're like, you want to just like jump in the water? Do you want to just like experience that freedom, of just like our
Yeah.
black girl magic, just like out here and just being free, not worrying about, I know a lot of people think about, in the South, the safety and all that, but
Mhm.
for us it was just like we felt really safe in this space and just like being, so we just like jumped in the water, and it was just such a liberating like random experience. But I just remember that conversation we had where we just dreamed of ourselves and our people just like being and thriving, and like the setting of the outdoors, and not worrying about the burdens of being perceived by the white gaze and all
Mm.
these other things, and it just, that's the dream I want to live in, honestly.
Yes. Like when you were talking, I was just thinking, this sounds like a beautiful fantasy. Like I want that. That's the life that I want. And there's like more and more conversation, I know, at least with my people, and I hear it, other people saying it as well, of, building our compounds where we all
Yeah.
get together and so these things that we're talking about as fantasy right now, I know they're going to come to pass. I know that
And
we're
they're
going to
already
bring them to
happening.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's
they're
already
happening.
happening. It is
And
already happening.
yes.
And it's so beautiful, and I feel a rising and a momentum growing
Mhm.
around Black health and Black wellness, where it's
Mhm.
being led and fostered by us in ways that are indigenous to us and inherently for us, and they just hit so different. um Again, growing up in a system for the last 30 years that was not for me, distinctly and specifically not uh for me to have the least of the experience. Like, it's so different
Mhm.
when we're running things, and especially being someone who's able to create space the way that I'm able to
Mhm.
do so intentionally, and the way that I want Black people to feel so celebrated and so seen
Mhm.
in all
And it's
that we
not a quota, it's not tokenized, it's not out of obligations. It's just out of purely showing up and creating a space that's authentic to us and how we want it to be and self-sufficient in everything that we do. Like it's just those are the spaces that are actually popping up and I'm seeing more and more of them. I'm
hmm
seeing people like starting retreat spaces. I'm seeing people start like little art collectives that are focused on being in the outdoors and celebrating some of the local talent that exists in like rural areas. Like, oh no, Black and brown folks do live out here. We are here.
hmm
Let's find ways to come together and elevate each other and be our own voices. And especially from our youth, like I see some beautiful things starting to rise up, and I think a lot of it has to do with us recognizing each other and the efforts that are happening and not feeling like you're doing anything in isolation, like I just I it's happening and I love it, and I want to continue to pour into that momentum.
Yes, y'all, Black people are returning home.
Mhm.
And it's so beautiful. Is there anything else we haven't talked about? Is there anything else we need to say?
I like me and you probably could just talk for forever,
No,
but on this topic, I feel like yeah, I feel
actually.
like
Because
that was
I was literally about to like start something else, but I was like, hold on, look at the time, girl.
Well, did you have any other questions for me?
um, I know that you mentioned it briefly.
Mhm.
But I would love for you to talk a little bit more, as much as you're comfortable, of course, about your graduate program and how
Mhm.
academia is. Um, if that's related to your coming home journey. And then I also feel like we need to end. The last thing I want you to be telling these people about is your podcast.
Oh yeah. Look, we're all getting our voices out here, friend.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no. So yeah, I'm in a PhD program. I'm not sure a lot of people haven't heard about it when I have first mentioned it to them, but it's called Parks, Recreation and Tourism Management. And so my focus is on leisure science. And that's really just understanding leisure spaces and how those spaces can be very transformative and how those spaces can be super, super key and really like essential social change. What are we doing when we're not working, and how do we come together, and how do we spend those moments? So, yeah, that's kind of my world now, and the academy is interesting, and I have lots of things that I have to reconcile for myself and being in this space that I'm very privileged to be in and to come from a family of educators and academics to where I can understand the language and the politics and all of the issues that come along with these spaces and us being attacked for talking
Mhm.
about DEI. Like there's so many things that I could get into, but I know this world very well. And so for me, it's I'm not here because I love higher education. I'm here because I do believe in education, and I do know that there are many of us in these institutions that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And so if I can find a way to bridge some of the knowledge and resources and people that are in these institutions to the efforts that are happening through more grassroots level community-based initiatives, like I can be that bridge, I can translate those things. So that's kind of how I see my role. But the coming back home is interesting because I felt like I kind of had to leave home that I found in the mountains, in that space of really feeling connected with myself to come to this almost like this mission of higher education. But you know, for me, I look at it as a fact that it's just a season of my life and it's not my forever. And
Yeah.
so if I have to come here on mission and get what I need to get out of this and make the connections I need to make in order to create better platforms for myself or others, then I'm here on mission. You know, I'm not here just for the sake of being here because I don't need their validation. But you might
Period.
feel like that when you're in it. But yeah, so that's kind of been my journey right now in higher education. I could talk about that all day long, but
Yeah.
it's been fun. I'm learning a lot of things and it's a cool field, cool people, a lot of social justice warriors in this area.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Come on, Black people in leisure. Like,
Yes.
that's one of the things I'm constantly manifesting for my life.
Mm.
That word is the exact word that I use, more leisure.
What
And
does
that
leisure mean to you? I'm
for me,
curious.
I always throw leisure in with rest and relaxation. But for
Mm.
me, leisure is just like, it's like a third space, you know?
Mm.
Like, it's not work, it's not academic, it's not, it's just a space where I'm just gonna be. Like, I think about big, like, resting pads, and I think about pillows, and I think about
Mm.
sunshine or
Mm.
rain, even, you know?
Mm.
So, like, leisure is so attached to healing. Leisure is attached to calmness for me. It's
Mm.
attached to clarity. Without leisure, we just, whew,
Yeah, which is why
healing.
when you think about what you just explained to me and the need for that, and we just quickly think about like the history of how leisure has been used to exclude. Leisure has been something
Hmm.
privileged to a specific population. Leisure
Hmm.
spaces is where we see a lot of segregation in pools and beaches, and like a lot of that happens in leisure spaces. So it has been
Hmm.
very politicized. And so what happens when we have the time to be in leisure? What happens when we have the time to actually self-reflect and to unite and come together in spaces? So that's been attacked. If we remove leisure spaces, if we remove leisure opportunities for
Hmm.
certain groups, then you know, then you hold a lot of power in that over
Yeah.
people's minds and what they can be capable of.
And
So
our youth are a prime example of how that happens and what happens when all the leisure spaces are taken away. So
mm-hmm.
people can pay
So
more
that's a
attention
whole
to
other
that.
thing, but that's
Keep
my
all
field.
the
We could talk.
conversation.
That I promise you, I could talk about that all day because that is my field of study. But I don't. What was the last question? I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, I'm like, let us just wrap this up, child. We could literally talk all day because
Okay.
that is another hour long conversation just right there with youth
Yeah.
and the way that they deserve more leisure spaces.
Okay.
But please tell my beautiful, wonderful followers all about your podcast and where they can find you and support you in the world.
Absolutely. So we are we as in me and my sisters, we will be hosting a podcast series together called Where the Wild Roots Grow. And so it's kind of an extension of conversations like this with beautiful humans on this healing journey. But we really wanted to focus on understanding our different paths through the perspective of family. And so we would love for people to stop through and to give us a listen. Right now, we have an Instagram called Where the Wild Roots Grow. So you can follow us there and join the collective and keep up with some of the things we're doing out in the mountains in the rural South. We be out here. We be out here. So excited to keep the conversation going, though.
Absolutely. Kayla, thank you so much for spending this time with me, for sharing your wealth of knowledge, your beautiful perspective that is just so well rounded and well thought out. Um, I really appreciate you. I'm always sending you love. I'm always rooting for you. I really look forward to rekindling and growing our friendship more.
I
and
agree.
just more collaboration, like honestly.
Yes.
So
On the other side of the coast, we can still collaborate.
yes,
Thank you for your time,
absolutely.
though, friend.
Yes, East Coast, West Coast, Black people coming together.
We
Both
everywhere.
cultures.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Y'all, this has been another episode of the Hot Girls Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Salenna Green, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, so I stopped.
Since I know you're tired, since I know you're stressed, you were always favored and you were always blessed. It's all about that. Hot girls healing. We doing it our way. Hot girls healing. We better day by day. Hot girls healing. We doing it our way. Hot girls healing. And it goes